You were never told the truth about power, discipline, and the quiet rules that govern your own mind. What your father never explained is that life doesn't wait for preparation. It reveals who masters themselves first. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see the subtle mental frameworks that separate the indecisive from the self-directed, and why these hidden lessons were never spoken aloud. Every man carries patterns he never chose. Habits, reactions, and quiet assumptions shape your decisions long before you even notice them. They are inherited, absorbed, learned, woven into the way you respond to stress, to opportunity, to yourself. Most never see them. Most never pause. Yet this internal terrain is where real power begins. Awareness is the first strategy. Observe your impulses without judgment. Track the moments you react instead of act. Emotional regulation comes from noticing the storm before it moves you. Self-discipline is the daily practice of choosing long-term clarity over short-term comfort. Boundaries and standards are not restrictions, they are the architecture of mental strength. Every decision you make silently compounds. Internal mastery is slow, deliberate, and invisible, but once established, it dictates the quality of every choice, every response, every forward step. This is the quiet work your father never described. You rarely notice the patterns that quietly shape your life. The way you hesitate before speaking, the decisions you make under pressure, the impulses that pull you in one direction or another, these are all echoes of habits, learned long before you understood their weight. They are inherited, absorbed, repeated. You were shaped by rules, silences, and unspoken expectations that were never explained. The choices you think are yours often follow scripts written by others, or by the unconscious mind you've inherited. The first step in reclaiming control is awareness. Not casual awareness, deep, deliberate observation of your own thought patterns, your emotional responses, and the repeated behaviors that govern your actions. Notice the moments you react instead of respond. Observe the ways your assumptions guide your judgments. Every unnoticed habit is a thread in a larger tapestry that dictates how you operate in the world. Pull the thread deliberately, and you begin to see the architecture of your mind. Awareness is the foundation of internal strategy. Before you can plan, before you can discipline yourself, you must map the terrain of your own thoughts. This is the quiet work most men avoid. They chase external guidance, advice, or shortcuts, hoping someone else can direct them. But strategy begins internally. Every moment spent noticing, every choice observed without judgment, builds a mental framework for self-mastery. Begin with your emotional responses. Observe the situations that trigger irritation, doubt, or hesitation. Ask yourself why you react the way you do. Trace it back to its source, sometimes to childhood lessons, sometimes to unconscious assumptions about what is acceptable or expected. Question those assumptions. Not all of them serve you. Not all of them are aligned with the man you intend to become. Silence has a weight. The advice you never received, the truths left unspoken by those who raised you, echo through these patterns. You must confront them internally to build clarity externally. Then, turn to thought patterns. Identify the repetitive mental loops that cloud judgment or create unnecessary conflict within yourself. These loops are subtle, often disguised as routine or normal thinking, but they shape every decision you make. Awareness allows you to intervene, to disrupt cycles before they dictate outcomes. It allows you to pause and choose deliberately, rather than drift unconsciously along inherited scripts. Awareness also anchors self-discipline. You cannot strengthen what you cannot see. Discipline is not punishment. It is the conscious alignment of action with long-term standards. But first, you must know what patterns are guiding your impulses, where your attention drifts, and what internal rules have been silently adopted without review. Awareness exposes the gaps between who you are and who you intend to be. Long-term focus is impossible without this foundation. The mind that operates unconsciously repeats mistakes, reacts predictably, and follows the rhythms of old programming. The man who masters himself first observes these rhythms, identifies their source, and begins the slow work of recalibration. emotional regulation, mental clarity, and consistent standards all grow from this conscious observation. Each choice you make becomes intentional. Each response becomes a reflection of your values, not inherited habits. Finally, awareness is responsibility. You begin to see the patterns, and you must accept them as your own. Not as blame, not as judgment, but as the raw material for growth. Every impulse, every repeated behavior is yours to understand, to refine, to master. When you accept this, self-respect follows naturally. Boundaries solidify. Confidence emerges quietly, without posturing, because it is rooted in competence and consistency. Internal mastery is invisible to others, but impossible to ignore in yourself. It requires patience, observation, and deliberate thought. Each hour spent noticing, questioning, and understanding builds mental authority. The silent rules of your upbringing, the lessons left unsaid, are no longer obstacles. They become data. They become the blueprint for a man who moves deliberately, who responds with clarity, and whose presence reflects the discipline and standards he has forged internally. This is the first step in true strategic self-mastery, seeing yourself as you are, without illusion, without deflection, and without external validation. Awareness is not an end, it is the lens through which every future action, every choice, and every decision is measured. In this lens lies clarity, and in clarity lies the power to craft a life that reflects your own standards, your own discipline, and your own authority. From here, every habit, every impulse, and every repeated pattern becomes an opportunity. Every observation of yourself becomes a choice, and in this deliberate attention, the foundation of internal mastery is laid. The advice your father never gave you, the lessons left unspoken, are no longer hidden. They are visible, measurable, and ready to be transformed into deliberate, disciplined action. This is the path that begins with awareness. Emotions are not enemies. They are signals, messengers carrying the weight of your past, the habits you inherited, and the silent rules you absorbed without realizing it. Yet most men allow these signals to dictate action, a flicker of irritation, a sudden rush of pride, a wave of fear or doubt. Left unchecked, they amplify the patterns running quietly in the background of your mind. They turn hesitation into indecision, impulsivity into regret, and inherited habits into repeated mistakes. The next step is observation, not suppression, not avoidance, simply noticing the surge before it drives your hand or shapes your words. Feel it, name it, track it. Ask, why is this emotion rising? Where does it come from? Often, it traces back decades of conditioning, lessons absorbed in childhood, expectations left unspoken, responses copied from others without scrutiny. Recognizing these triggers gives you distance, and distance is controlled. Control does not mean denying yourself. It means responding intentionally rather than reacting unconsciously. When irritation flares, pause. When frustration builds, step back. When pride or doubt tugs at your judgment, observe the impulse instead of surrendering to it. Each pause is a small victory. Each observation strengthens mental clarity. Each deliberate choice builds a habit of internal authority. Reflection is the next tool. At the end of each day, examine the emotional currents you experienced. Where did you drift into reaction? Where did you act with awareness? Which impulses were aligned with your long-term standards, and which followed inherited scripts? This is not self-criticism, it is data collection. It is strategic, it is the Machiavellian principle applied inward. The strongest leaders of thought first govern their own impulses before making any outward decisions. Patterns will emerge. Certain situations trigger the same responses over and over. Certain people, words, or circumstances pull at old loops embedded in your mind. Awareness alone is not enough. You must cultivate the discipline to interrupt the cycle. Breathe, reflect, reassess, respond from choice rather than habit. In these moments, your emotional regulation becomes your internal compass. Discipline in emotions strengthens every other aspect of your life. Decisions made in calm clarity are not perfect, but they are deliberate. Standards are maintained because you act according to principle rather than impulse. Focus deepens because distractions, the mental noise of reactive feeling, lose their grip. confidence grows quietly, anchored in consistency and competence, not performance or approval. This practice compounds. The man who masters his impulses is less swayed by circumstance. He recognizes that external events are largely beyond control, but his internal state is entirely his responsibility. By governing the currents within, he aligns his actions with his long-term goals. Emotional regulation becomes a form of strategy, subtle, disciplined, and far-reaching. Every moment of patience, every instance of deliberate pause, compounds into authority over self. It is here that true clarity emerges. Once you no longer react to every provocation, every frustration, you see the patterns behind your behaviors more clearly. The loops inherited, repeated, and amplified by unchecked emotion begin to reveal themselves. You see the scripts, the assumptions, the mental shortcuts, and you can choose which to follow and which to discard. This is power born quietly, not over others, but over the self. Social confidence follows naturally from this mastery. When emotions are regulated, presence is steady, words are measured, boundaries are consistent. Decisions align with internal standards rather than external pressure. People respond, not because you sought to influence, but because your internal discipline radiates competence and integrity. Emotional clarity translates into authority of presence, and that presence is undeniable in its subtlety. The practice is ongoing. Every day presents new triggers, new inherited scripts, new impulses demanding attention. But the discipline you build does not erode, it compounds. Each reflection, each moment of observation, each deliberate pause strengthens the architecture of your mind. Over time, emotional regulation ceases to be effortful. It becomes instinctive. It becomes a foundation upon which self-discipline, personal standards, and long-term focus are anchored. Mastering emotion is mastering choice. It is reclaiming the threads of thought, impulse, and reaction that were once inherited and unexamined. The man who governs his inner state first does not act rashly. He does not drift. He navigates life with deliberate force, clarity, and responsibility. Every outward action becomes a reflection of internal mastery. Each decision, each response, each interaction is guided by the mind he has disciplined rather than the emotions he has allowed to dictate. This is the path of true internal authority. Quiet, relentless, strategic, not flashy, not aggressive, but undeniable in its effect. Emotional mastery is not a destination, it is a practice, a standard, and a principle that shapes every choice, every action, and every moment of life. It is the foundation upon which all self-discipline, mental clarity, and long-term personal authority are built. Discipline begins in the mind long before it is visible in action. Every day, you are faced with choices, small, quiet, often unnoticed. Some are trivial, some consequential, but all are tests. The man who strengthens his mind treats each moment as a chance to practice control. He does not wait for pressure to strike. He builds the capacity to respond, to decide, to act with clarity and purpose, long before the situation demands it. Mental practice compounds. Small decisions, repeated deliberately, shape competence in ways the casual observer will never see. Start by recognizing your patterns of thought. Notice where hesitation or distraction creeps in. Observe the impulses that threaten to pull you off course. Once you see them, you can intervene. Each intervention is a repetition of discipline, an exercise in internal authority. Over time, these interventions accumulate. They become instinct. They form the scaffolding of a mind that does not flinch under pressure. Decision-making under uncertainty is not learned in moments of comfort. It is forged in the deliberate engagement of thought before the storm arrives. Break the process into steps. Pause. Gather information. Examine assumptions. Ask what outcome aligns with my standards. What choice reflects the values I want to embody, not the habits I inherited. Mental discipline is not rigid, it is precise. It allows flexibility without surrendering principle. It is the ability to navigate chaos calmly, to see clearly when others flounder. Pressure reveals weakness, not because it is unfair, but because untrained minds follow impulse. The disciplined mind does not resist pressure by force, it absorbs it strategically. Every decision becomes deliberate. Every pause is measured. Emotional clarity and mental control are inseparable. One strengthens the other. The man who masters himself internally can navigate external challenges without being consumed by them. Consistency is the key. Mental discipline is not built in a day or even a week. It is built in the hours spent noticing, choosing, correcting, and refining. Each repeated choice aligns your behavior with your principles. Each reflection strengthens your awareness of what matters. Over months and years, these small acts accumulate. They become competent, they become quiet authority. The world may not see it immediately, but it is undeniable in the way you carry yourself, in the decisions you make under pressure, in the calm certainty of your actions. True authority begins internally. It is not earned by posturing or performance, but by the cumulative effect of repeated mental choices. Every instance you pause instead of react, every moment you measure instead of rush, every decision made in alignment with your long-term standards compounds into strength. The disciplined mind sees opportunities where others see confusion, solutions where others see chaos. This is the power of consistent practice. Frameworks help. Build simple, repeatable processes for making choices under uncertainty. Define your priorities and values clearly so they guide decisions automatically. When external circumstances shift, your internal compass remains steady. Mental discipline is a form of strategy applied inward, choosing deliberately, acting consistently, refining continually. Small, thoughtful choices are the units of long-term competence. Over time, they define your capacity to lead yourself, to maintain focus, and to act with authority even when the situation is unclear. Self-discipline and mental clarity are inseparable. One reinforces the other. The more you practice noticing, choosing, and aligning with principle, the more instinctive these habits become. Pressure no longer surprises you. Distraction no longer controls you. You operate from a foundation of internal standards and deliberate focus. Emotional regulation supports decision-making, and long-term vision keeps short-term impulses in check. Competence grows quietly but relentlessly, invisible until it is undeniable. This is how internal authority is forged, not in the applause of others, not in visible achievements alone, but in the mind trained to respond deliberately, to act consistently, and to refine itself continuously. Every repeated choice, every moment of reflection, every disciplined pause compounds over time, building a mind capable of clarity under pressure, calm in uncertainty, and steady in the face of chaos. Over months and years, the man who practices mental discipline becomes unshakable, not because the world bends to him, but because he has learned to govern himself. Every decision, every pause, every small act of self-mastery accumulates. Competence grows, clarity deepens, presence emerges, and the authority that begins internally eventually shapes every aspect of his life, quietly, deliberately, undeniably. Pressure does not arrive with fanfare. It creeps in quietly, an unexpected message, a sudden confrontation, a split-second decision that demands action. In these moments, the mind instinctively tightens. Hesitation appears, doubt creeps in, and internal conflict stirs. You feel the tug between impulse and reason, between what is comfortable and what is necessary. The way you respond here, calmly, deliberately, and with clarity, shapes every outcome that follows. Notice the tension within. Where does hesitation arise? What impulses push for immediate reaction? These signals are not weaknesses, they are data. They reveal the inherited patterns, unconscious assumptions, and emotional currents that guide your decisions. A man who masters himself does not ignore them. He studies them, understands them, and positions himself to act intentionally rather than react unconsciously. Impulsivity is costly, even when it seems harmless. Quick reactions feel decisive, but often they are guided by habit, emotion, or outdated scripts. Decisions made in haste compound silently, shaping outcomes in ways that erode competence and confidence over time. The cost is rarely immediate. It accumulates in lost clarity, fractured focus, and missed opportunities. Each impulsive choice becomes a subtle reinforcement of the patterns you inherited, rather than a reflection of the man you intend to become. The antidote is disciplined reflection. Before acting, pause. Observe the emotion, the impulse, and the underlying thought. Ask, does this choice align with my principles? Does it advance long-term clarity and competence, or merely satisfy a fleeting urge? This is not hesitation out of fear, it is measured decision-making out of self-respect. Each deliberate pause strengthens trust in yourself. Each reflection reinforces the mental frameworks that sustain discipline and emotional regulation under pressure. Strategic patience is not passive, it is a form of internal leverage. By observing, pausing, and reflecting, you extend control over the outcome without surrendering integrity. You gain clarity where others rush blindly. You maintain composure when circumstances seem chaotic. The man who masters this discipline does not need external validation. He trusts his internal compass, and that trust compounds over time into quiet authority. Small decisions, repeated consistently, accumulate like compound interest. Choosing clarity over impulse in minor situations prepares the mind for greater challenges. Responding deliberately to minor irritations, fleeting doubts, and daily pressures creates the neural pathways for strategic action when stakes are higher. The skill is transferable. The practice is cumulative. Over months and years, these small acts of self-mastery transform hesitation into precision, doubt into clarity, and impulse into intentionality. Emotional regulation and mental clarity are inseparable here. Each choice under pressure tests both. A man who acts without awareness allows emotion to dictate direction. A man who observes without action stagnates. The disciplined balance requires noticing internal conflict, weighing options, and choosing action that aligns with long-term standards and personal principles. Competence grows quietly, steadily, until it becomes instinctive. Boundaries and standards are your guideposts. They define acceptable responses before pressure arises, reducing the cognitive load when stakes are high. Clear principles allow the mind to act decisively without surrendering to the chaos of external circumstance. The disciplined man does not flinch because he is prepared internally. Each decision is a reflection of internal mastery, not external approval. Trust in yourself is the ultimate reward. Each moment of reflection, each pause before action, reinforces the belief that you can navigate uncertainty without losing control. This trust is not arrogance, it is grounded, earned through repeated practice, observation, and adherence to principle. It is the foundation of calm presence, unshakable composure, and quiet confidence. The hidden cost of impulsivity is subtle yet profound. Choices made in haste drain clarity, erode consistency, and weaken long-term focus. Patience and deliberate reflection preserve these qualities. They are the invisible framework that supports emotional regulation, mental discipline, and personal authority. The man who masters decision-making under pressure becomes a man whose actions are intentional, whose standards are unwavering, and whose internal authority radiates outward quietly but unmistakably. This is the discipline that separates reaction from strategy. The small, deliberate acts of reflection under pressure compound, building a mind capable of clarity in chaos, precision under uncertainty, and calm when stakes are high. Every pause, every observation, every thoughtful choice strengthens competence, reinforces personal standards, and deepens self-trust. It is through this patient, deliberate mastery of internal conflict that a man becomes steady, confident, and internally authoritative, ready for any challenge that life presents. The lessons you never received are not about what you lack. They are about what you fail to see in yourself. The patterns you inherited, the impulses you ignore, the decisions you make without reflection, they quietly dictate your life. Every moment spent reacting unconsciously, every choice made without awareness is a surrender of authority. It is not dramatic, it is subtle, but it accumulates, and the cost is real, even if unseen. Wasted energy, compromised clarity, diminished presence, and a slow erosion of the confidence that comes from self-mastery. Master your attention. Notice where your focus drifts, where distraction or habit overrides intention. The mind that wanders aimlessly gives away its power. Every observation of thought, Every decision to redirect attention deliberately compounds over time. Mental clarity is not an event, it is a practice. Small acts of awareness strengthen the neural pathways that sustain focus, self-discipline, and consistent action. Master your emotions. Impulses are not enemies, but unexamined ones become shackles. Anger, frustration, doubt, or fleeting pride are data points, not commands. Observe them without surrendering, name them. Trace them back to their source. Then act with clarity. Emotional regulation is the cornerstone of presence. A man who governs his inner state first does not flinch when pressure rises. He maintains composure, integrity, and calm decisiveness. Each measured response compounds his authority over self, and it radiates outward naturally. Master your decisions. Every choice is a thread in the fabric of your life. Decisions made in haste reinforce old patterns. Decisions made with awareness reinforce your internal architecture. Strategic patience is not hesitation. It is the deliberate alignment of action with principle, long-term focus, and personal standards. Each repeated, thoughtful choice strengthens self-trust. Each conscious act reinforces the internal rules that guide your life, quietly shaping your trajectory without fanfare. The external world will align naturally when you master these internal domains. The people, circumstances, and outcomes you encounter are reflections, not determinants of your internal state. Attention, emotion, and decision-making are your levers. When these are disciplined, clarity replaces chaos and presence replaces uncertainty. Competence emerges quietly, but irreversibly. Others may notice or not, but internal mastery is self-validating. Its effects accumulate in ways that cannot be taken away. Remaining unaware is a slow surrender. It is not a sudden failure, it is a gradual abdication of authority over yourself. Each unexamined habit, each reactive choice, each moment of surrendered attention compounds into a life shaped by the unconscious rather than the deliberate mind. You may feel functional, capable even, but subtle losses occur daily: lost clarity, diluted confidence, and weakened internal standards. Over time, this adds up to a life less directed, less deliberate, less self-governed than it could be. Internal mastery compounds quietly, but irreversibly. You do not see it in a single choice. You see it over months and years in the consistency of your actions, in the steadiness of your presence, in the resilience of your mental and emotional state. Discipline, attention, and emotional clarity interact like layers of a fortress. One strengthens the next. When you act with awareness repeatedly, you cultivate a mind capable of navigating complexity without losing composure. You become someone who responds deliberately rather than reacts instinctively, who creates standards rather than conforms to circumstance. Every practice, every pause, every measured choice reinforces this authority. The man who masters himself internally is not flashy, and he does not need to be. His competence is quiet, his clarity is firm, his presence undeniable. Social confidence follows naturally, not as a projection, not as a tool, but as the byproduct of alignment between thought, emotion, and action. Boundaries, integrity, and consistency are visible markers of internal authority. External outcomes are reflections of this disciplined internal framework. The shift is subtle but profound. Awareness transforms into control. Emotional regulation becomes strength. Deliberate decision-making becomes competence. The combination compounds into presence, authority, and confidence. What was once inherited, unconscious, and reactive becomes conscious, deliberate, and irreducible. You are no longer at the mercy of patterns, habits, or impulses you did not choose. You are the architect of your own mind. This realization is the psychological pivot. The lessons you never received, the silences, the unspoken truths, the inherited assumptions are not obstacles, they are data. They are the raw material for transformation. Internal mastery is not instant. It is not guaranteed. It is deliberate, consistent, and cumulative. And once it is established, its effects cannot be erased. Your attention, your emotions, your decisions, they compound quietly, reshaping every aspect of your life. A man who understands this holds the most powerful authority of all authority over himself. The external world may still surprise him. Challenges will still arise. But internal mastery ensures clarity under pressure, composure under stress, and consistent alignment with principle. The invisible work done quietly, daily, becomes the foundation for a life lived deliberately. No external lesson, no inherited advice, no sudden revelation can replace this. It is yours to build, and once built, it is irreversible. Self-control is not given. Clarity is not inherited. Authority over your life does not arrive from advice, circumstance, or chance. These qualities are cultivated moment by moment through attention, reflection, and deliberate choice. Every pause before action, every measured response to emotion, every decision aligned with principle strengthens the foundation of your internal mastery. You do not need to wait for external permission to practice it. You do not need approval to maintain standards. The work is yours, and the results compound quietly but irreversibly. Mental clarity allows you to see what others miss. It separates distraction from priority, impulse from principle. Emotional regulation ensures that your responses are deliberate rather than reactive. Self-discipline anchors every choice in long-term focus. Personal standards guide what you accept and what you reject, and responsibility for your actions solidifies authority that no external circumstance can take away. These are the levers that shape presence, confidence, and competence. They are internal, deliberate, and yours to command. Authority over yourself radiates naturally. It is visible in steadiness, consistency, and composure. Social confidence is not a performance, it is a by-product of alignment between thought, emotion, and action. Boundaries are respected because they are consistently maintained. Decisions are trusted because they are grounded in principle. Others notice, not because you demand it, but because internal mastery has a presence all its own. The path is deliberate. Every practice of focus, every act of self-discipline, every moment of reflection compounds into long-term strength. Nothing external can replace this work. The lessons you never received, the unspoken rules, the inherited habits, they are data, raw material for transformation. You decide what becomes permanent. You choose the structure of your own mind, the direction of your life, and the authority you carry within it. If you want to continue uncovering the unspoken strategies of mental mastery, subscribe and join a community committed to thought, discipline, and insight. Share your reflections below to deepen this conversation. Your growth is deliberate, your authority is internal, and the work begins with the choices you make right now.